Welcome to a new Paradigm of Education podcast. I'm your host, Monique Sayers. Today we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Alison Maynard. Before I go ahead and introduce Alison, I'd like to introduce our podcast for those people that are tuning in for the first time. So, a new paradigm of education is an evolution in education. It's a movement where not only are we evolving as humans, but the earth is evolving as well. So I strongly believe that education needs to be evolving the same pace as humanity and the earth in order for us to be able to thrive and to have beauty within education. From there, this has led us to create this podcast and to connect with all different types of conscious leaders around the world to share their vision around, well, what is a new paradigm of education anyway? So today we have Alison with us. She's a former teacher turned fearless. I'm going to start that again. That sounded really bad. I'll continue.
Oh, no, it says fearless education thought leader.
Okay, so today we have Alison. She's a former teacher who's turned into a fearless education thought leader and an entrepreneur with a focus on helping parents guide their children in filling in the gaps that today's schools are missing and beyond in this new paradigm of education. So I'd love to get a feel for who you are, Alison. Would you introduce yourself to us, please?
As you introduced me, my name is Allison Maynard. I'm originally from Southern California. I was born and raised in Orange County. I spent 80% of my life in a classroom in Orange County, first as a student, K through 12 public education. And then I attended college, Cal State Fullerton. I went there 3 times, actually. I got my bachelor's degree, my teaching credential, and my master's degree in education there. And then I went into the classroom as a public school teacher. I taught at the high school level for 9 years. And then I taught at the middle school or junior high school level for 8 years. That's around ages 11, 12, and 13 years old, because I know in different countries, it doesn't translate. So I did that for 17 years. I knew for a long time that teaching in the public sector was not going to be a forever career for me, but I didn't know how I was going to get out of it. I had a series of health issues. I had 3 surgeries over the course of 5 years for endometriosis that kept me in the job because I needed the medical insurance, because I'm sure you've heard that the medical system, healthcare system in America with the insurance is not that great. So I needed to stay because I had really good health insurance and I had all of these medical issues. Well, what I didn't really understand was that the job was contributing to my illnesses and it was making me sick. And so I had mental health issues, I had addiction issues, I had all kinds of things going on while I was teaching. And so after my 3rd surgery for endometriosis, I had a severe crash in hormones, which almost made me die. And so I was taken off work 4 weeks before the school shut down because of COVID. And so I was off work for the rest of the year. And in that time, I started to feel better. And I knew that it was time for me to leave. And so I resigned in June of 2020. I didn't have a plan. I just knew if I didn't resign at that moment in time, I would be in the classroom forever. And I knew that was not, the job would have eventually killed me. I can say that with 100% conviction. The job would have killed me eventually. And so I didn't really know exactly what I was going to do. I was invited down to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico for a vacation because Mexico was one of the few places that was still allowing people to travel there. So I came down to Mexico for a 5-week vacation and I basically didn't leave. And so what happened as I got down here is not only did I start to heal my body, but I started to make all of these changes and shifts in me, in the way I think, in the way I view the world. And I came up with this idea that in order for kids to be more successful in school, parents need to get involved in the process. And so I created an online course guiding parents just that, with tips and suggestions and how they can become more intimately involved in the process of helping their adolescent kids be more successful in school. And so that's where I'm at today.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that journey. I'm sure a lot of educators and parents and a lot of people actually would really relate to that, even in their own kind of jobs that have been in the system, where it's tiring, you know, it's a lot of energy, and it's tiring, and it takes a lot to show up as a conscious teacher, a conscious educator, and to be able to give your heart fully when you're depleted. So I really honor you for stepping away and nourishing yourself, because I really feel that is the seed of this new paradigm, is everybody taking a stand for their own responsibility, their own care and safety first. Whether you're a parent listening or an educator listening, you know, take that stand, look after yourself, and then from there you're able to fill your cup to help other people. So I really honor you for that. Thanks for sharing. So I'd love to hear more about what led you into your mindfulness for parents course. I'm sorry if I've said it incorrectly, you can correct me again, but mindful matters, because I feel like that is definitely a key for the new paradigm, and that's going to help a lot of people to hear about that.
Well, yeah, so my Mindful Matters course, the whole concept is based on my 17 years in the classroom, and it's based on all of the ways I taught and how I curated teaching. One of the reasons the job made me sick is because I was not doing what I was supposed to do. At least in my school district and in a lot of the schools in the States, there is a district board approved mandated curriculum that we're supposed to teach. The problem with that is that there's so much information in there that teachers are rushing through each activity, each story, without giving kids time to really understand and master the information. They're doing it to check the boxes off so they can get to testing and said, well, I taught them everything I was supposed to teach. And a lot of that content was really boring and dry. And my audience of kids, it just didn't work. And so I taught in a whole completely different way, which was really successful for my kids. And I taught a lot of the kids I had special ed students, I had English learners, I had the behavior issues, I had the kids who are not engaged in learning. You know, I had that hodgepodge of students. So I taught them differently, and I achieved a lot of success with my kids. Like, I had students who could barely read, who all of a sudden would understand what a paragraph was saying. It was amazing to watch, but I was always in the principal's office. Why are you teaching this? Why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? So I was constantly defending my practices. So when I left, I thought, well, why can't I take what I was doing in my classroom, and why can't I teach parents how to do it? And so that's what I've done. So the course is based off, and just my belief system is based off 4 pillars of education. And I believe that if a student has a basic understanding of these 4 pillars, they can be successful in any class they're in. They may not get an A if it's a letter grade class, but they have the tools so they can complete the assignments and do what's asked of them. I think a lot of the problems that we have in today's schools is that the kids don't know how to do what they're being asked. Gone are the days where you can hand them a paragraph and say, read this paragraph and answer these questions. A lot of the kids, they read for completion. They do not read for comprehension because they're so distracted and they don't know how to read. You ask them to write, you know, they don't even know how to write a sentence half the time because again, it hasn't been taught to them. The expectation is that they already know how to do all of this stuff. So I feel if kids have a basic understanding of my 4 pillars, they will have the toolkit to be able to do the things that are asked of them in their classes. And so the 4 pillars are study skills and organization, critical thinking and reading. And I teach that in a much different way than what we're used to. I teach by using images first, because the school system is based on 1800 farmers, agrarian society, and it really hasn't shifted all that much. We're still teaching the same subjects and the same information. We have technology now. That was not, when I was going to school growing up, we didn't have the internet in my house until I was a senior in high school in 1996. These kids today, they're born looking at images from the time they're newborns, basically. We have to teach kids how to read the images they're seeing first before we can expect them to apply it to a text. So I would teach my kids how to read. So I teach parents how to do that. Then the 3rd pillar is writing. And the 4th pillar is mindfulness and emotional well-being. Because if kids are stressed out, if they're anxious, if they're depressed, if they're angry, how can they study and how can they learn? So I show parents some simple techniques there, how to identify emotions, and some simple exercises that kids can do to self-regulate if they get angry, or how to have a conversation if they're sad or upset. Because I don't know about you, I was not taught how to identify or deal with my emotions probably until like the last 10 years. I'm in my 40s now. And so I really feel like when kids can identify their emotions and they can self-regulate, they can learn. So that's where I came up with the concept. It came from my classroom, and that's a little bit of, the mindset behind it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Definitely the regulation piece is definitely the key for all the other doors to open, as you know. We share a lot about that in our book, A New Paradigm of Education, as well. And I really believe that is also part of the seed of the new paradigm, is the acceptance of the awakening of humanity, and the acceptance of that mindfulness is really helping, like so many aspects, learning, anxiety, and everything else that goes with that. So that's amazing that you're able to bring that in and show that to parents. Maybe we could go through some of the, a little bit of some tips you could give them around that. And I realized we didn't actually share the fourth pillar as well. So there's also that to mention too.
Oh no, the fourth pillar was the mindfulness and emotional well-being.
Okay.
Yeah, the third one was writing.
Okay, I got them blended. Okay, that makes sense. Everybody who was listening, if maybe you heard the same as me, or maybe you were paying more attention.
Or maybe I missed it.
Yeah. Anyway, maybe I think that would be really helpful if you could give just maybe a little advice around some mindfulness tips, and then maybe you could just also branch off into something else that parents could use as well. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, as far as mindfulness is concerned, I think, and this is going to go two ways. I think communicating with your kids is the most important thing. And I think we've gotten away from communicating. Like, you walk into a restaurant now, I don't know how it is where you are, but you walk into restaurants in California, for example, everybody's on their phone, mom, dad, and the kids. And, everybody's looking down and people aren't interacting. And we wonder why we have all these problems. Communication is so important, and kids model the behavior they see in their parents. So parents are going to have to start putting their phones down, and they're actually going to have to start talking to their kids. I think that's step number one in creating more awareness, because, how are you feeling today? Asking questions like that. You seem a little bit down today. Is something going on? Then you can start to identify and have conversations. I think that right there is one of the most important things parents can do, hands down. Getting off the technology. I'm not saying all the time, but set aside an hour a day where your family interacts with each other. If that's too much, start with 15 minutes. You can always start small and add up. You can make it little manageable chunks. Something else that I think is really important that parents can do that also goes along with communication is asking tons of questions, because that's going to start to get our kids critically thinking about things more, because kids aren't being asked questions. They're passively doing all of these activities. They're passively on their social media. They're passively watching things. They're not thinking about it. They're just absorbing it. So if parents actually stop and start interacting more with their kids and asking the right questions, then it's going to open up lines of communication, and kids' brains are going to start to think critically about things. The example that I like to give right now is when your kids come home from school for the day. How was school today? That's the very standard question, right? And what is a very traditional response? Fine, good, or oh. And then that's it. That's the end of the conversation. Stop asking that question. Ask more direct questions, like, tell me something funny that happened in school today. Or tell me one thing you learned in your science class today, or which teacher did the best job today? So you give them more directed questions, and even better, you prep them before you ask the question. So in the morning before you drop them off at school, you say, okay, we're going to talk about 3 things that you learned in school today. So be prepared for that question. So then they have an awareness for it. So when you talk to them at night, they already know what the questions are going to be. So they already have answers prepped. What happens is you have the lines of communication open, and you can use those questions and their answers, and you can segue into, well, why do you think that way? Or why do you think this happened? And then you can start a conversation, which is so important in adolescence, because what do kids start doing in adolescence? They're going through puberty and they want to shut down. They don't want to communicate with parents. It's so important that kids are communicating in adolescence, especially nowadays, because there's so many outside variables that are very dangerous that they do not know how to maneuver around. So if you have the lines of communication open, over simple things like how was school today, or did you like that movie, or what did you think about that baseball game, or whatever the topic. Then when the hard stuff comes up, then it'll be easier for them to talk to you because they're used to having a conversation with you. You can't all of a sudden expect them to talk about how difficult social media is, or about that school, how they're feeling after a school shooting or whatever, when you don't ever talk to them. You know, you want the kid, you want them talking to you, but you have to build that trust. You have to build capacity with them, especially if they're not used to it. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy at first. You know, you gotta train, you gotta practice. You have to be consistent. You can't just ask questions for a week or two and be like, okay, we're good. The kids are thinking now. You have to do it consistently, and you have to do it over and over again. You don't have to ask the same questions, but you need to set up the expectation that there will be questions and that you'll have conversations. And so you're doing two things. Again, you're opening up the lines of communication. You can check in on their mental well-being, which is really important. And you're working on shifting their brains into thinking critically about the things. So you're turning passive activities into active opportunities for learning.
That's amazing. And for the parents who maybe are homeschooling parents as well, they could also be doing this same thing in their own homes. The ones who are no longer in the system, that they could also be doing what you're saying, but just in the same format with their home education. It applies for everybody, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you for sharing with me that. And so when you were talking about help, like, because I know this is a big topic myself as a teacher, like it's almost like this mystery for parents, like with what goes on at school and how they can help their kids exactly, because they don't really know a lot of the time, right? So what would you suggest would be some pointers for them in knowing that, besides asking the questions, which is amazing, but maybe some practical things that they could do to apply with their learning or something like that?
Practical things to apply with the learning.
Yeah, like for example, the children need help, you know, with learning at home, and rather than placing all the emphasis onto the teacher, I think that's the old paradigm. I think the new paradigm is co-creation, you know, of everybody, like the parents, the kids, the students, everybody's co-creating what they want to learn. So I was wondering, did you have advice around that?
Well, I think keeping the lines of communication open with the teachers and the schools is really important.
Yeah.
I know that the kids who struggled in my class, whose parents reached out and asked for help, they did better. So if you're not communicating with the teachers at school, I think that's really important. Making sure your kids are getting the appropriate assignments, directions, and everything. Don't just have them, you know, what did you do to school today? Nothing. Well, that's not true. I used to have my students at our particular school, they were given planners at the beginning of the year, and they were supposed to write down all of their assignments in the planner. So when we would have parents say, the kids say they aren't doing anything, I'd say, check the planner. So, you know, that's another easy way to communicate with the teacher, having the students write down whatever assignments there are, whatever the homework is, and then the parents can cross-check that. And if the parents have the directions with them and the actual assignment, then they can say, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. Here's how I can support you. I think that's a really simple way that parents can get involved. If I don't know, again, what other schools and other countries and other states, even in America, do, but having your kids start writing down what they're doing in their classes each day, I think that's a great way to keep on top of what they're doing.
Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I just have all these visions of also these children, you know, like frolicking through the park, splashing at the beach, and just like the parents hanging out with them. And then this is like part of the education in itself, you know, and you know, being in Mexico where you are, and myself in Uruguay, you know, this is what life is like. It's just like living the life, you know, and that this in itself forms an education. And I guess it does come back to what you say, like in those moments, communicating with your students, or not your students, they'd be your children at that moment, of like, well, you know, this in itself is education. Is there something that makes you excited here, and going from that place, right? As well.
Oh, yeah, if kids, well, and that's another thing you can do. If your child has an interest, you know, if they like a baseball player, or if they're really into some sort of animal or something, use that. And I think this is a little bit more for the homeschool, but it can be for anybody. Use that as the lesson. You know, oh, they like kangaroos, so print up information about kangaroos, have them read it, have them write about it, have them ask questions. go to a zoo and look at one in person. You can create lessons and learning opportunities around pretty much anything. For me, reading is reading. I don't care what the kids are reading. If they're reading comic books, they're still reading. And they're not, another thing, read actual physical books, not on a Kindle or on a phone. Our brains don't process the information the same. The blue light, gets in the way of our sleep. It's really important. We read 25% slower on screens than we do on actual books. So I think just, tapping into what your kids love and enjoy, and then just taking those school skills, research, reading and writing, and having them apply that to what they like, they'll be more engaged in the learning.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for sharing. I get all excited. You see my face. Probably you can't see my face, the people who are on the podcast, but yeah, I get all excited when I feel about the children learning and their curiosity and their just their wonder and excitement, for this beautiful planet that we live on.
And what's so sad is today's modern school is killing that. It's crushing that in a lot of ways. It was crushing me. Like I liked to teach using advertisements and news articles. I loved using the news because it was fresh and it's what was going on in the world, and the kids were interested in that. And I would get in trouble for that because it wasn't what I was supposed to be teaching, but it was interesting to the kids. So, as a professional, I wasn't even being listened to. My professional judgment wasn't being honored. It's because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. So, fostering that, nurturing that love of learning is so crucial, because we really should be lifelong learners. And what I'm seeing happen is we're just becoming these obedient workers who will just, wake up and go to work and, monotonously do the same thing over and over again until we retire. And that's just not the way we should be living life. But you've got to nurture those skills when they're young.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for taking a stand for being somebody who's chosen to, honor life in itself, and I feel this is the wake-up call for everybody in this new paradigm. And I've seen the shift during this pandemic of a lot of people who were in typical type of schools or even typical kind of jobs. Maybe they've even lost their jobs. They were forced to, or they chose to walk away. And then they've created beauty from this. There's just so much beauty out there that I've seen, so many different types of schools, so many different ways of learning. And it's like connecting with people like you times a million. I've connected with a million other people who are all doing the same thing and all holding hands and just making a stand that, education can be different. And that's what this podcast is all about, that truly to create and to walk a path of a new paradigm, it just takes one or two steps of doing what you're saying, following your intuition, not following what is supposed to happen, following that piece of you that knows. And from there, that's how it changes,
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you've also mentioned, which I really love as well, and I feel this is a big paradigm shift, like the idea of college versus not college, and why kids don't need to go to college anymore. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, these are words like 2 or 3 years ago, I would be hitting myself for saying this kind of stuff, but I just don't think college is necessary for everyone anymore. It's so ridiculously expensive now. I went to Cal State Fullerton for my undergrad. 4.5 years cost around $12,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now that same time period costs $40,000 or $50,000. It's just, and that's for a public school in California. When you start talking about the UCs or even private universities, and you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, then you have kids who are in debt, and then they can't even get a job because college doesn't guarantee a good job, because a lot of jobs want you to have experience. And so, I think the younger you can tap into something that your kids love to do, whether it's music or art or writing or drama or whatever, if you can figure out something early on and start, honing in and developing that talent, that craft over time, by the time they get, graduate from high school, hopefully they have something where they can actually start making money off of that. But that has to be started a few years before. They can't just graduate and go, okay, I want to do this. They need to have that skill set developed. I think if a child has a plan, they can do anything. They can really do anything that they want. without needing that college education. Now, that's not to say if you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, you're still going to have to go to college. It's just that's the way it is. But there's a lot of things you can do without needing that education. And life should be about finding joy, not about, I got to go to work every day. So if you can find something that kids love that brings them joy and that can also bring an income for them eventually, then it's going to be like they're not working. Like I look at, look at the Etsy stores, for example, how crafty, and on TikTok, all of these different people who are baking and doing art and, making like candy things, like it's all kinds of crazy stuff people are doing to make money, and they're doing really, really well. They don't need a college education for that. Besides, do colleges really teach you how to be an entrepreneur? Does public school teach you how to be an entrepreneur? The answer is not really. So, I mean, you can go to community college and take some classes, I guess. You can pay for a coach. There's all kinds of coaches nowadays who can help guide you through the process. So there's all kinds of things you can do besides going to college now.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I feel like the pandemic in itself amplified that. All of a sudden, there's conscious entrepreneurs and soulpreneurs across the planet, which I really love. And I've actually started to work with some of the teens myself in our next book, A New Paradigm of Education. We have 3 teens that are just explaining are exactly what you're saying. Like one of the teens, when she was 4 years old, she told her parents that she wanted to be an author. And the parents said, okay, you want to be an author? Okay, we're not going to stop you. Why not start now? And she's already published 3 books.
Exactly.
And she's age 15.
That's the perfect example. And now she'll have all that experience and she's already making income.
Yeah, it blows my mind.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And the other one, she wanted to do mindfulness. And so her parents were like, okay, if you want to do mindfulness, go for it. And she became a Reiki master and a yoga teacher. And she's out there just, she's 15 as well. No, she's 13. And she's out there teaching like adults, kids, everybody, and living her passion. And you know what, maybe that passion will change later, and that's fine as well. But I think it's just amazing that she was supported in that way, because you were saying that you're working with parents, to be able to support the parents, to be able to support the children, to work in that way of expansion and allowance of kind of beyond the box. Well, then what is that? And a lot of the jobs aren't even created now that they're going to be doing anyway. So how can we just be scaffolding this kind of way of teaching that doesn't even exist anymore? It's ridiculous when I think about it,
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of skills, as you would know, that we learn beyond the classroom. But, I think the classroom has brought in, it also has its purpose in terms of, socialization and key skills, like you were saying, around being able to be planning and being accountable, and, the foundational skills as well. So I think it does have its place in that way. It just depends on the child and how they also want to be.
Yeah, well, and just to speak on the socialization thing, because I know that's such a big argument about why people don't want to homeschool their kids.
Yeah,
school's tough, especially adolescents in high school. There's so much more bullying going on, and things are very cliquey, and there's a lot of teasing and name calling, and I know some of that is character building, but that's not socialization. That's torture for some kids. So if that's your argument for keeping kids in schools, is social, maybe keep them in school for the younger grades, but pull them out for the older grades, because that's when the socialization, I think, gets really dicey.
Yeah, I hope that, there is going to be a solution for that, is that as educators and as parents, that we make a stand and we make a conscious change within ourselves, which then I hope would then generationally change all of us as well.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually this idea of bullying would become very, very old paradigm, but it is still very present at this moment, and very real for so many people.
Well, and social media is not helping at all. The cell phones and being on, the kids are comparing themselves all the time, which taps into the mental health issues. And there's a lot of really mean stuff that comes up on the social media, like these TikTok challenges where it's destroy the school bathroom, or slash the tires of your teacher's cars, or pick a kid and bully them. Like, this is the kind of stuff, and kids think it's funny. Kids think,
Wow.
because that's, so, I mean, at least in the States, that's some of the stuff that's happening. So, you know, my advice is to get kids off social media completely if you can. If not, monitor it very, very closely. TikTok and YouTube, you think that content's great. There's a lot of really dicey stuff out there, prank challenges that are really dangerous that kids think they can model. You've got misogynistic men talking about beating women and young boys being radicalized by this. So there's all kinds of crazy content out there that I don't think parents even realize that their kids are consuming. So, if your kids are going to be on social media, YouTube, TikTok, etc., keep an eye on what they're consuming.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with everybody as well. That's really helpful to know, and yeah, really saddening as well, when we could create such beauty and love in the world, why create these other ways? I just don't get it, but thank you for sharing that as well. We always ask everybody who comes on here, what would be your vision for this new paradigm of education, if you could have any vision?
Any vision, that the whole school system collapses,
Mm-hmm.
that it's more child-led, that parents are involved in the process and trust that they can help their kids and guide them along the way, and that kids are really directed into finding their life passion, and they're not forced, like, if you're going to be a writer, why do you need to take calculus? Like, why are we forcing kids to take all of these classes that, I haven't touched math since fall 1996. So really honing in on what kids love and directing them in that direction so that, again, they can do something that brings them joy and provides an income for them. Like, I think that's ideal. Plus it has a huge mindfulness component too, because then we get kids to self-regulate and calm down. So that's what I would like to see in the future of education.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your vision. And it's very similar to everybody else. If anybody else out there is feeling the same way, I feel like there really has been this shift in education, and by everybody just taking a small step here and there towards helping their children or their students in some way, helping themselves in some way, together we can hold hands and really make the paradigm shift be created. So before we close, I just wanted to check in with you and just see if anybody wanted to reach out to you, how they could reach out to you, Allison.
So I am on social media. Here I am talking about being on social media. I'm on social media, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. My handle is Maynard's Mindful Matters. And if you'd like to learn more information about my online course and what I do, my website is maynardsmindfulmatters.com.
Okay, that sounds amazing. I'm sure you'll have lots of parents interested. I'm curious myself around how you can support us. It's always beautiful to have other like-minded educators wanting to help our parents, and as we shared, it's very, very necessary to be able to connect in with their children in this way. So thank you so much for coming today to our podcast, A New Paradigm of Education, Allison. It's been an honor to be here and co-create with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So those of you who are tuning into A New Paradigm of Education podcast, we also do have a book called A New Paradigm of Education, which is a group of educators and parents from around the world who have held hands and made a stand towards making a change in education. And we also have a group as well called A New Paradigm of Education. So if this interests you and you're wanting to also be a visionary and to hold hands with us, you can find us there. As Mahatma Gandhi says, be the change that you wish to see in this world. Namaste, everybody.